Disney's Dinosaurs from, what year was this stupid thing? 2000. So Kat said she had another idea for a marathon, because I am but a leaf in the wind to her whims. And she said, but because the Nickelodeon marathon, it's we don't have that many movies left, honestly, and most of them are bad. So she had an idea for another one, and it's a lot more specific. That is, she wanted to watch all of the movies from the weird Disney era, from like I'd say the recent weird era. That being, she said this was inspired by Atlantis, our viewing of Atlantis. The period from around like 1999 to 2009, like roughly the first, I guess really 2000 to 2009, like the first decade of the new millennium, where it's like this odd time period for Disney, because for like Disney animated films, because they bought Pixar, and Pixar had a couple movies out at that point, and it was almost like you could feel Disney prioritize being like, okay, Pixar is the new animation studio. There was like whenever you look at the joint product from that period, pretty much all the notable ones are Pixar productions. The Disney ones tend to be sort of forgotten and weird. And we're just going to do it in chronological order. And thankfully, looking at the list, I think most of them are actually pretty okay. There's probably some good ones in that. Treasure Planet's in there. So I'm going to be a happy camper. But we unfortunately had to start off with the one that we were sort of dreading, which was Dinosaurs. This was the 2000 CG live-action hybrid dinosaur movie that they put out. Let's see. What is there to say about Dinosaurs? It's not good. Okay, so this movie was originally going to be, I was reading the IMDb trivia, one of the simple pleasures of life, for this film, and it was originally going to actually be, when the movie was greenlit, it was going to be entirely stop motion. It was going to be stop motion with a couple live action elements in the forms of, like, I think a couple people in, like, monkey suits, which probably would have still been weird. The reason that they pivoted to being a CG movie was because I believe Jurassic Park came out. Yes, hang on. Under Disney, maybe I should look up like the Wikipedia for this. It was something like that, like there was some weird pivot where at some point they decided, no, the dinosaurs must be CG. Dinosaurs 2000. Let's heat this baby up. 2000 film. I want to read about the production. Let's see. So so it was inspired by this short by Phil Tippett, who you might know from the recent Mad God. Yeah, Mad God. The short he made in 1984 called Prehistoric Beast, which is about like dinosaurs and stuff. Tippett's skill at creating what is Go Motion? It's a variety of stop motion animation which incorporates motion blur into each frame involving motion. Interesting. Led to the 1985 CBS animated documentary Dinosaur. A year later, Tippett was hired to do work on the special. Um, let's see. 19. Oh God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Here it is. The thing that ultimately, this is a quote from Smith, someone involved with the production. The thing that ultimately killed it is that Disney knew that Jurassic Park was coming along pretty well, and they knew it was being done digitally. They figured, well, maybe we should wait until we can do it digitally. Yeah. So if you don't know anything about this movie, it is the choice to make all CG dinosaurs, I think, single-handedly tanks the film. I don't know if it tanked it at the time, but in retrospect, from a modern perspective, absolutely. And here's the thing. When you compare the dinosaurs to other CG effects at the time, CG creatures and stuff, I honestly don't think they look that bad. I don't think, in comparison, it's super noticeable. Well, no, sorry, I shouldn't say noticeable. It's like not good. This is Disney, you know. It's relatively state-of-the-art technology. The problem is that the dinosaurs are placed in entirely live-action environments. Maybe there's a little bit of CG going on for the environments, but they are like essentially green screened into real footage. Okay, so when you play like a video game, right, you play Tomb Raider on the PlayStation 1, the original, and the game has like 5 polygons, and Lara Croft's boobs are made of paper. They look like obelisks. You notice it a little bit, but very quickly your brain kind of smooths it over. Maybe a better comparison would be a show like Reboot, an entirely CG show from, I don't know, around the same time period. And Reboot looks significantly worse. It looks it's a TV budget, right? It's a TV budget kids show, right? So you'd expect that the animation, the quality of the models and all that, it doesn't look nearly as high fidelity, but I think art style wise, it works so much better because it feels cohesive. You watch Reboot and you can acknowledge that, okay, yeah, this is extremely primitive CG, but because the whole show is that style, it doesn't, after a certain point, it feels less like a technological restriction and more like that's just the art style. And I think in recent times, you've seen games, for instance, that go back to more to retro styles. Pixel art at first was really big. That, oh hey, pixel art actually has a lot of interesting merits. Now you're seeing a lot of like low poly type of games that are more stylized, that sometimes intend to look like something off of the PlayStation 1 or the N64 or something like that. And that's a style now because that has an aesthetic. And when the whole thing is like that and you commit to that art style, you can create a certain kind of mood, right? A certain tone, a feel to your game. You look at something like Cruelty Squad or Dusk. Dinosaurs it is constantly reminding you of how bad the CGI looks. Because your brain, like at every single second of the film, your brain has a comparison point to what real life looks like. And the dinosaurs are in it, and it's not working. It's not working. And I would say it's probably worse than the like prequels. I watched a really interesting video the other day. I'd recommend it. It's called Why Does Attack of the Clones Look Like a Video Game? And it's from this channel called, oh god, it's like something like the Empire something like that. The Empire, Crushing the Empire, something like that. And it's this dude who is an actual visual effects professional who's worked in the industry for a number of years. And he's breaking down from a historical, technological, a lot of different senses, a creative standpoint, why Star Wars Attack of the Clones feels weird when you watch it, like visually, like why, even at the time. And the complaint or the comment people would make about it was that it feels like a video game. And his thing is, well, I mean, if you look at video games around that time, or other CG things, it doesn't really look like a video game. That's just the best way that people can describe. There's actually a bunch of it's a great video. There's actually a bunch of very nitty gritty little technical details in the way that the film was made that you don't notice, but your brain did. It's literally the Plinkett joke, like the Plinkett meme. You don't notice it, but your brain did. Like the weird little ways that CG shadows work, the slight differences between CGI cloth versus actual cloth. The way a fully CG character's skin looks a little different, and the certain little details in the way that they move that are slightly mechanical, and when you have it up to real people, it becomes very noticeable. A really interesting video. I'd recommend it. It's called Why Does Attack of the Clones Look Like a Video Game? And Dinosaurs is really similar to that, except that's like the entire movie. With Attack of the Clones, it's like you can joke about how the whole movie's filmed on like a blue screen or whatever. I mean, like a lot of it is, but most of it is like real characters, like real people on set and stuff like that. Dinosaurs is asking you to believe. It's asking you to feel like there's any kind of weight to characters who are obviously fake and like noticeably fake, and it really takes me out. There's like not a single moment of the entire film where I can actually get invested and believe in the world because of that decision. There's some really bad shots. Like, there's a scene early on where one of the lemur characters makes this, and the lemurs look horrific. They look really, because they have supposed to have skin. The dinosaurs fare a little bit better because they're scaly, but the lemurs having skin and fur. There's a moment where one of them makes this, just makes this like wide-eyed expression, and like my womb dried up, dude. Like I felt myself becoming less fertile. It killed my boiveries. It looks so bad. And it's frustrating to me because dinosaurs are so cool. Dinosaurs are such a cool thing, right? And I feel like I have this want, this desire in my head for a dinosaur film that's like the first half of WALL-E. The first half of WALL-E is there's no dialogue, everything's told visually. It's this, not super out of the box, but interesting little story. Like, you totally get it. It's a very engrossing first half. I think the second half of WALL-E is fine. It's just, I really like the first. It feels like a really good short film that gets like extended. That gets extended to like feature length. I want a movie like that, but with dinosaurs. I think that would be so cool. Like, it would be awesome. And to have just a dialogue-free film with dinosaurs where you're telling a story visually with these animals. Doesn't Bambi do kind of a similar thing, I guess? I haven't seen Bambi in probably over a decade at this point. And it turns out that apparently that original idea, that original vision for the script was that it was going to be kind of like that. It was going to be stop motion, and it was going to have no dialogue. And then I think Bob Iger was like, no, hang on. Was it Michael Eisner? Yes, it was Michael Eisner. Sorry. However, at his insistence, it was decided early on that the dinosaurs would talk during the film. To accommodate this change, Aladar, who's the main character, would be given lips in contrast to actual iguanodons who were duck-billed. That's so funny. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, and man, this movie just it's just boring. It's just boring. The premise is, so that's the thing, is like, even if, that's like the tough bit, right? Even if it had that vision of being a fully stop motion movie with no dialogue, maybe it would have been better. Maybe it would have been more interesting. But at the end of the day, it's just not an interesting film. The directing is extremely boring and flavorless. There's like one interesting sequence early on in the movie where the meteor hits, and that kicks off them having to fight. It's like every dinosaur movie. I feel like every Land Before Time or all that crap. It's always, we have to find a new home. Because, I don't know, I guess it's hard to tell stories about motivated animals. But, yeah, that's the premise. Which could be interesting. You can do that in an interesting way, it's just that this movie does it in the most formulaic, boring way. But anyway, there's the sequence with the meteor hitting the Earth. And there's a couple shots, because it happens at night. And there's just these shots where it starts, like the entire world gets lit up as if it's daylight, and then it flashes. It's like a flash, and then it's night again. And I thought visually that was kind of cool. Like when something really big lights up in the sky, and it's like daytime for a second. You ever seen like huge fireworks or videos of like explosions, like factory explosions, like chemical factory explosions kind of thing? Excuse me. That's like neat. I don't know. It was just an interesting visual, and there's nothing that interesting in the rest of the film. It's literally like 5 or 6 seconds. It's so weird. It's like he's like Dinosaur Moses a little bit. It's this egg that gets drifted away, and then it from its original nest home then gets this dinosaur who gets raised by lemurs, and then the meteor hits and they have to find a new home, and they find this herd of other dinosaurs, and there's the leader, and the leader is like stodgy and stuck in his ways, and there's like we need a scary dinosaur to be the villain, so we're gonna have a Carnotaur, which is a cool looking dinosaur with like the devil horns and shit. There's a weird aspect to where when the Carnotaur finally shows up and it's like a problem and the characters have to face him or it or whatever, there's 2 of them. They don't speak, which is really strange. I was reading that apparently the decision to make the Carnotaurs silent was because it would be quote-unquote too creepy to have an entire movie of these characters being stalked by this thing. Or it's like kind of looming in the background that the Carnotaur is trying to find them. And then to suddenly have that character speak, and that's like stupid because that's like interesting. That would actually be that's kind of a cool idea, to have a character stalking someone else an entire film and then finally hearing their voice at the end. That's kind of like actually a compelling idea that might make you emotionally invested in what's happening. No, we can't have that. So the Carnotaurs are evil, so they don't get to speak. The Carnotaurs are, it's so weird because they're all animals, but the Carnotaurs are the only ones who are treated like animals, where they're just acting on instinct to eat and all that. And they without any kind of complex internal logic like the main character dinosaurs have. I don't know. We were so uninvested in this movie. I think we just started making food in the middle of it and not paying attention. It's a stinker. How is this thing received? Filming accident. Oh yeah, someone died during this because a camera boom hit a power line while they were filming. Company was later fined $5,000 for violating worker safety laws. Dude, imagine dying for fucking Dinosaur. Imagine. Christ. I feel so bad for that guy. Let's see. Reception. I guess it performed pretty well at the box office. The film holds an approval rating of 65%. Well, Roger Ebert gave the film 3 stars out of 4, praising the film's amazing visuals but criticizing the decision to make the animals talk, which he felt canceled out the effort to make the film so realistic. Oh man, yeah, and that's the thing, right? I almost can't get mad at it because it took a really long time. I want to say it took like 10 years of having consistent CG films and 3D video games. I think it took a long time for people to realize that a realistic art style tends to age pretty poorly. Nowadays, I actually suspect that, and I think it's been like this for a while, since at least some examples from like the PS3 generation. I think that nowadays we've sort of hit a level where I genuinely don't think the stuff that's coming out now is going to age poorly, that is trying to be photorealistic. I was watching Prox play Payday, like the original Payday from like 2011. And that game looks pretty good. There's a couple things you can see, like some like flat textures where maybe today they would use some more complex like bump maps to give something the impression of depth and stuff like that. But overall, that is still a pretty good looking game and not terribly high budget either. But it is like, I think, a pretty common sentiment at this point that when you try to go for a photoreal art style, it ends up getting obliterated in a matter of years. This is why Pixar, I don't know if this was intentional. If it was, it's very smart. I think it's really smart that Pixar started off with Toy Story. Because you look at Toy Story, and even today, I think visually it's aged pretty well. With the notable exception of the human beings, which look freaky, and looked freaky, I remember when I was a kid. Not, like, watching the movie at like 10 years old, I was like, these humans look a little funky. That dog looks a little funky. And it's like, yeah, having the foresight to make all of your characters toys that don't have to look realistic and can look kind of plasticky, and you can sort of stylize a little bit, ends up working really well when you don't have the means for really high fidelity textures or lighting effects. It holds up pretty well. And most of their early thing, like Pixar did not want to do things with human characters in it for a while until The Incredibles, at which point they realized, oh, shocker, to make appealing looking characters in 3D, You actually just use the same principles that you use to make appealing looking characters in two-dimensional artwork. You just stylize it a bit and give them recognizable, clear, shapes and stuff like that. And you don't try to go so realistic. Nowadays, you could probably go like more realistic, but you know what I mean, right? I can't fault them for going for realism in this, because I can imagine a point in time where this movie came out and it was extremely impressive. I mean, just looking at the review section, it seems like this was pretty cutting edge, and I can believe that. But yeah, I can't fault them for it, but it has not aged well. It has aged extremely poorly, in fact. And there's a reason you barely ever hear anyone talk about it. Because it's boring. The Los Angeles Times review a technical astonishes and disheartens as only the most elaborate, most ambitious Hollywood products can. A technical amazement that points computer-generated animation towards the brightest of futures. It's also cartoonish in the worst way, the prisoner of pedestrian plot points and childish too-cute dialogue. There's a review from Variety. An eye-popping spectacle later wrote, somewhere around halfway through, you begin to get used to the film's pictorial wondrousness, to take it for granted even, and start to realize that the characters and story are exceedingly mundane, unsurprising, and pre-programmed. Yeah, it's... Yeah. The one reason to see this was that it was cool looking in 2000. And then I looked at the writing credits, and let's see. So it was directed by a guy named Eric Leighton, who also did actually kind of interesting Owls of Ga'Hoole and The Nightmare Before Christmas. He was like an animation director on it. Or animation department, I won't say director. He was on King Kong. He later worked on Mad God. That's kind of funny. Like Anomalisa, Coraline, he was a lead animator on it. James and the Giant Peach, he was an animation supervisor. Like, he's actually fairly accomplished in the world of animation. I wonder if it's just that, like, the constraints of the film and the decision to make it the scenes live action and to be using a relatively new technology that a lot of people weren't comfortable with at the time kind of hindered what he was able to do. I wonder if this would have been a much more interesting movie if it was entirely CGI or entirely animated, or at least largely stop motion with like sets and stuff like Nightmare Before Christmas, a movie that he worked on in the animation department that is visually very interesting. I wonder. And then the writer of the film is a fella named Ralph Zondag, who only wrote one other movie, that being Pocahontas. And then I looked at the writing credits for Pocahontas. Holy shit. There are so many writing credits. It is no wonder this movie was a fucking disaster. Let me just count off the writing credits. So there's 3 written by credits, right? 3. And then a bunch of story by credits as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 story by credits to Pocahontas. And then additional story development, of which there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11, 23, 26 total writing credits for Pocahontas across everything. No wonder that movie's just a complete disaster. Just holy shit, it makes so much sense looking at it now. That it is such a weird, all over the place, vaguely insensitive, weird picture. Christ. So yeah, I can't blame Ralph Zondag entirely for Pocahontas. Do they have any Native American people working on it? I don't see anyone. I don't see any names that strike me as being particularly native looking. Yeah. Well, yeah, Dinosaur sucks ass.